about human beings. This is to know about their souls and to know about their deeds and actions. For example, when we talk about any hero of the play, for example, so you could say like on the basis of his actions, so we get to know about his soul, okay? But later on the later stage, if he has to face some kind of bad consequences just because of his actions, so definitely he is responsible for action. So this is ultimately to control your own actions and to know about your soul as well. So this is you can say a realization of your own soul, a realization of your own actions, your own deeds, okay? Why literature is very much important in any society? Because that is an autobiography of the society, that is a reflection of that very society, its people and its culture, okay? So every civilization is founded upon ideals. So there are many certain ideals in in every society. Every human action springs from an ideal. There are some ideals in a particular society, and all the people of this society, they imitate those ideals. So basically the purpose of literature is to preserve those ideals, okay, and then to represent them in front of the society, okay. Literature preserves civilizations and human actions. So where to find out the record of any civilization? For example, Roman civilization, they introduced a very good culture in the English society. They were very civilized. They built too many buildings, too many roads, and they promoted literature as well, okay. The very concept of civilized word was brought by Roman empires in English society. So where is that record that is present in literature, and that is about human actions as well? For example, when we talk about Victorian society, what kind of society they had, or when we talk about Romantic society or Anglo-Saxon society, Anglo-Norman society. So my dear students, time and again I'm repeating some of the terminologies in front of you, so you'll be familiar with the terms at least, and then I'll define what do we mean by certain periods in the history of English literature. So according to my point of view, these 4 points are very much important as far as the importance of English literature or any other literature is concerned. My dear students, here you'll have to keep in mind, we're not talking about English literature. This is literature in every society. So it preserves the civilization, and it preserves ideals, and it preserves human actions, okay. So you'll definitely get to know about human actions even after centuries, okay. So that is a kind of a record of everything of the society, okay. History of English literature. Now gradually we are moving towards history of English literature, which is basically the main concern of this course. This is not a chronological account of books written in English language. So my dear students, here we are not focusing on English language or not year by year description of different events in a book, okay. So we'll talk about like the historical development of English literature with the passage of time. So basically this is the purpose of this course. The literature of England is one of the highest achievement of a great nation. It should not, however, be read simply as a national expression. It is a body of significant statements about abiding human concerns. The language in which it is written has evolved over hundreds of years and is still changing. Several nations, including Canada, the United States, and Australia, are indebted to England for a literary heritage. So my dear students, on this slide you can see the importance of English language along with English literature, okay. So basically English language is quite a flexible language, and it has evolved over you can say hundreds of years. So my dear student, it is still changing. That is why this is not at all a dead language. So it has the flexibility, and it has the capacity to digest the words from different other languages as well. So that is why with the passage of time, so that is why this is the world's language. So my dear students, here you can see like many countries like Canada, the United States, Australia, they are very much indebted to England for our literary heritage. So this is quite an expansive course, okay. So my dear students, here you can say like English people, they have quite an expansive literary heritage, okay. History of English literature again, again को कट कर दें, history of English literature जो बोला है उसको भी कट कर दें. It is basically a record of the relationship between a writer and those who precede or succeed him or her. It is a record of the relationship between age and age. It is a record of the influence of individual writers on an age and vice versa. A record of both individual writers and their special contributions to literature. So my dear students, here you can see in the first point, this is basically a relationship between a writer and those who precede or succeed him or her, okay? And the other one, this is a relationship between age and age. So it talks about the rise, the growth and the decline of schools and movements, okay? And the third point is like a record of the influence of individual writers on an age or vice versa, and both individual writers and their special contribution to literature. So my dear students, basically history of English literature deals with all these concepts. This is not a year by year description of different events in the society, or different centuries in the society, what happened in that century and what is happening right now. It's not like that. This is a relationship of a writer and those who succeed him, okay? And this is again a relationship of different ages. So basically it talks about the characteristic features of any particular age and its relationship with other ages as well, okay? So basically it talks about the rise, the growth of any school, or you can say any movement, okay? So this is like we'll be talking about different ages in detail in in the next lecture. So my dear students, you will be able to know about those ages in detail that time, okay? So basically this is influence of individual writers on any particular age and vice versa, like how that age had influenced that writer. So basically it is a kind of debate on writers' contribution in that particular era, and the influence of that age on writer's personality on his or her writings as well, okay? So it is a record of both individual writers and their special contribution to literature. So my dear student, this is like we'll talk about individual writers, we'll focus on their personalities and their contribution in any specific era in the history of English literature as well, okay? Aims of history of English literature. So basically we use history of English literature to give a clear account of whole transformation of literature from period to period. So my dear students, when we talk about history of English literature, so there will be too many changes which would happen with the passage of time when we compare different ages or different periods in the history of English literature. So my dear students, it is a study to explain those successive changes as far as their matter, form and spirit are concerned. So my dear students, basically our focus would be on all these things, okay? So this is an interdisciplinary approach where we mix too many disciplines together in one discipline only, okay? What basically are periods? So I started my discussion with the period today, what are like different eras or different ages. So basically let me tell you what do we mean by period. A period is a certain length of time during which a particular kind of taste prevails. So this is the definition of a period in history. A taste of an age differs from that of others. So my dear students, here we'll categorize different periods. So basically this is a certain length of time during which a particular kind of taste prevails. So all the people, for example, when they live in a particular society, so definitely they face same kind of problems and they usually have the same taste as well. So my dear students, a literature written in an age is marked by various common features like its subject matter, thought, tone and style. So my dear students, we get to know that the style, the thought, or you can say the subject matter of that era is very much you can say common among all the writers of that very age. Each age had its own particular lines of interest and its own particular way of thinking and feeling about things. So my dear student, that is why we have divided certain centuries, certain periods into ages, okay? So what basically is that certain you can say length of time during which one kind of taste prevails, and you could see like the same subject matter is common there, the same tone would be there, the same thought would be there, okay? So basically this is a kind of classifying certain periods, okay? factor deciding a period. So my dear students, here you might be confused, like how can we decide any kind of period, because there are too many periods in the history of English literature. So I'll explain to you what are basically the factors which are involved in deciding a period. Anything that brings fresh ideas and interest into the life of an age, so definitely we would say that would be another period. So my dear students, when we will be talking about different ages in the history of English literature, so dear students, you'll be able to know like about different tastes relevant to different eras. Okay, anything that modifies the thought and feeling of a period. So my dear students, here you can say like when we enter into next period, for example right now we are here in one period, so we are going to enter in the next period. So what would be that, like fresh feelings would be coming, fresh ideas would be coming, fresh style would be there. So there would be a modification of the previous thoughts, previous feelings and previous styles, a change in the attitude towards men and things. So basically due to certain sociological events, for example the cultural activities which are going on in any particular society, okay, and how do all those activities influence the mind of the people, of the writers, of the readers. So definitely, so my dear students, here you can see like will change our attitude towards man and things relevant to any particular era. What are basically the labels of different periods? The period in the history of English literature are usually labeled with the epithets derived from history. For example, Elizabethan period, at that time Queen Elizabeth was ruling England, or the Victorian period, for example Queen Victoria was ruling England during that period. So we have given their names to different periods. Okay, so basically these are the labels of periods as well. Okay, so my dear students, now I'll introduce all the periods of the history of English literature in front of you. So this is just, you know, year-wise description of the period. So we'll talk about all those periods in detail in the next lectures. Okay, so here this is just a briefing of all those periods that you get to know about, you know, at least the names of those periods. My dear students, here you can see like the Anglo-Saxon period, which is the very first period in the history of English literature. So you could see it was started in year 449 and it was ended in 1100. It is comprised of many centuries. Okay, before Britain before the Anglo-Saxons. So my dear students, here when we will be talking about the Anglo-Saxon period, so you could see like we'll talk about the history of Britain before Anglo-Saxons. Okay, so here my dear students, here let me briefly guide you like who were basically the inhabitants before Anglo-Saxon period in Britain. So Celts were the inhabitants of that time, so about whom very little is known. Okay, so my dear students, this is you know, I'll guide you about Britain before the Anglo-Saxon period, then the Germanic invasions, then Anglo-Saxon society, what kind of society they had at that time, and then we'll gradually move towards Anglo-Saxon literature. So my dear students, here our focus would be on the Anglo-Saxon period. Okay, and we'll spend a full-fledged lecture on the Anglo-Saxon period. Okay, the second period in the history of English literature is medieval period. My dear students, you'll have to keep in mind that the taste, or you can say the subject matter, the style which was very common in the Anglo-Saxon period, here you won't be able to find it. So that is why we have categorized different periods and we have given them certain names. Okay, the medieval period, it was started right after, you know, the Anglo-Saxon period, and the year is 1100 and it was ended in 1500. Okay, so again a very long period. So you'll get to know about the Norman conquest during this period. That was the reign of William the Conqueror, and the feudal system was also very much common during that period. Okay, so then we'll talk about the medieval church as far as the religious factors of that very era are concerned, and then we'll gradually move towards the medieval literature. Okay, the third period in the history of English literature is the Renaissance period, and it was started in 1500 and was ended in 1600. So my dear students, this is comprised of whole full-fledged century, and this is also known as Elizabethan age because Queen Elizabeth was ruling at that time. Okay, my dear students, there is one more name for this you know, Renaissance period, that is the age of Shakespeare, because Shakespeare was the most prominent personality of that era. Okay, The other one is the Puritan age. So we'll talk about the Puritan thoughts during that age. So you can see this is comprised of 60 years. Okay. The third one, the fifth one. 1, 2, 3. The fifth one is the Restoration period, and it was ended right after the Puritan age in 1660 and was ended in 1700. So my dear students, here you can say like this Restoration period is comprised of 40 years. Okay. Then comes the age of Pope. 1, 2, 3. Then comes the age of Pope that was started in 1700 and was ended in 1744. So my dear students, here you'll see like we have given these names to certain period or certain ages due to, you know, the influence of some eminent writers on that very age. So here you can see that this is the age of Pope, and this is also known as 17th century literature. Okay, so it was started in 1700 and was ended in 1744. Okay. The age of Johnson, again a part of 18th century literature. So Johnson was the most prominent figure among other writers, so that is why we have given his name to this very age, and that age was started in 1744 and was ended in 1784. Okay. Then the eighth one is the Romantic age. So my dear students, here will take a start you know, of the Romantic age from the year 1798, and it would be ended in 1824. So my dear students, then we'll after you can say after the age of Johnson. My dear students, the eighth one is the Romantic age that was officially started in 1798 and it was ended in 1824. So my dear students, here you can say like the elements of romantic spirit would be too much present over there previously, like when we were talking about the age of Pope, age of Johnson, Elizabethan age. So everything was you know, according to the rules, and you know, subject matter was quite limited, and people, they were not supposed to cross the limitations of writing poetry, so they had to bind themselves within certain rules and regulations. So when we move towards you know, the Romantic age, so my dear students, here you can see this is an age of freedom, this is an age of liberty. People, poets, they were not restricted to focus on form as such, on style of writing as such, rather they were more concerned with theme or the subject matters. So my dear student, let me share some of the things of the Romantic age with you people. The Romantic age focuses on, you know, beauty, on nature, on human beings, and on their relationships. So basically here you can say during the Romantic age, human being is on the center of the discussion. Okay, so instead of focusing on form, on the rules and regulations which you need to follow while writing poetry, so you could see in the Romantic age, my dear students, people, they focused on subject matter and on themes. One more thing I would like to share with you people about the Romantic age is that like we'll have to give priorities to different genres in different eras as well. My dear students, here when we talk about the Romantic age, so you could see you know, poetry was on the very top position over here. Okay, so we'll talk about different romantic poets in detail. Okay, the Victorian age, when Queen Victoria was ruling England, so that age was started in 1832 and was ended in 1900. So my dear students, we'll be talking about the Victorian age in detail. So you can see like we'll divide Victorian age into two parts. One would be the first half of the Victorian age, and the other one is the later half of the Victorian age. So you'll see the differences you know, as far as the subject matter of both the parts are concerned. Okay, as far as the subject matters of both the parts are concerned. Okay, modern literature. Okay, after the Victorian age, you could see modern literature, and the tradition of writing modern literature was started in 1900 and was ended in 1961. So my dear students, here we'll talk about different modern writers, okay, and what was basically their philosophy and how their philosophy was different from the Victorian period or from the Romantic period or from the Elizabethan period or from, you can say, Anglo-Saxon period. So my dear students, here you could see we'll enter into a new philosophy in the history of English literature when we'll be talking about modern literature. Okay, Then post-modern literature, my dear students, here like after modern literature, you could see like at that time, my dear students, let me give you briefing of modern literature. That was an age of scientific inventions, scientific advancements, technology was on the very top. So my dear students, later on, like they used to have scientific formulas everywhere, even in literature. So my dear students, at that time, they focused on science a lot, and they were in search of objective reality or of objective truth, which was later on rejected by the postmodern literature. And according to postmodern literature, we cannot ignore individual, we cannot ignore subjective element of a literary piece of work. Okay, so my dear students, that was basically their doctrine. Then we, after drawing a comparison of modernism and postmodernism, my dear students, will talk about the present age, okay, which is till date. Okay, so what are basically the trends which we are following till date? Okay, so our focus would be on this one. So my dear students, in order to sum up today's lecture, I just want to explain, revise some of the points from today's lecture. We took a start with what is basically literature, and we talked about history and literature, and then what is history of literature, and then we move towards what is period. My dear students, here you can see like that was an introductory lecture about history of English literature. Okay, so my dear students, when we will move towards the detailed history of English literature, then we will talk about different genres in the history of English literature as well. Okay, for example, about novel, about poetry, drama, prose, essays, and many other things. Okay, my dear students, here then you will be able to analyze to do a comparative study of different genres along with different ages. So my dear student, the point here to remember is that literature is a reflection of life. It is based on truth, it is based on beauty. So this is about human life, their actions, okay, about their intentions, about their souls, in order to know about any particular nation, about any particular society. So this is very much important to read its literature, because that is an autobiography of that very society. My dear students, here I just don't want to tell you the year by year description of different events in the history of English literature. Definitely you should know the importance of these events, the historical, sociological, you can say cultural, religious factors which are involved in the formulation of text, in the development of certain themes, in the development of certain subject matters. You can say in order to have a clear-cut idea about the style as well. So you'll have to take care of all these things in future while talking about history of English literature. This is you'll have to take history of English literature like a story, okay, like there are certain events in the story like in form of plot. So my dear students, this is, you'll have to arrange them logically in your mind, okay. The concept must be clear to you, and you can say the important events of any particular era or the distinctive features of, you can say, any particular age or the writer's contribution to that very particular era. So my dear students, these are the things which you have to keep in mind while talking about history of English literature. So my dear students, basically the point here is that when you talk about writer's contribution, so definitely the most, he or she would be having the most, you can say, suitable style, which is the true depiction of that very era. So my dear students, here we are not going to focus on all the minor literary figures of that time only. We'll just talk about the most prominent, or you can say the eminent figures of any particular era in the future lectures. So my dear students, hope you'll be able to digest the things in a good way, and you'll learn a lot from history of English literature. So my dear students, this is my surety to you people that you will enjoy this course a lot. When we'll be talking about different historical events, so definitely those are in form of a kind of you can say story, okay. So we'll talk about different styles. So my dear students, in future everything would be so helpful for you when you will be analyzing poetry or drama or novel, because everything would be clear in your mind, like the historical development of English literature, what was basically the scenario at that time, what was people's mentality at that time, what kind of problems people were facing during any particular kind of era. So from the point of view of analysis, history of English literature is very much important subject. So my dear students, by keeping in view the historical development of English literature, will have a look on this subject from multi perspectives, okay, from sociological perspective, religious, political, economical, and psychological perspectives as well. So my dear students, this is a kind of a subject where you will study all other things which are there in the society and which are very much important in the formulation of text, okay. So a text that is in front of you in form of poem, for example, so that is not a text. What are basically the factors which are involved in the formulation of text? Those are very much important in literature. So definitely you'll have to focus on all those aspects. So I'll share some poems with you as well, okay, of written by some eminent writers. So definitely you'll be able to get to know about those writers in a very good way, okay. So my dear student, that is all about today. So today's lecture has been taken from these two sources, so you can note down these two